Now, many thanks for always keeping yourselves glued onto the continent's leading intellectual platform, actually the highest platform for solution finding. You guessed right, you are on the desk. And guess what? We are broadcasting in Bugolobi. It's actually an exclusive. We are on the road, Spring Road, in Bugolobi at Krish Mall Nyenya Furniture. Now they have given us this space to shoot, and guess what? It's going to be a very insightful and also very informative episode. As the man in the chair, I'm telling you, as you start the year, there's some people you need to listen to so you can actually get acclimatized to success, acclimatized to making it, and acclimatized to making money. Now the man in the chair, he's been in Uganda for 14 years. Now if I say he's been in Uganda, it means he is not Ugandan. He is actually from the United States of America, but he's more Ugandan than some of us. Joel the Traveler has been here for over 14 years, and he's been able to do a lot of things. Study the culture, study the socio-economic activities, and he's also been engaged in business. All this in tonight's episode. Now I'm joined by Joel the Traveler on the show tonight. Welcome to the show, and good to see you, Joel. I'm telling you. So what does that mean?
That means I'm happy to see you.
You're happy to see me?
Yes.
How have you learned this language?
Through pain and suffering, and asking a lot of questions and being shameless.
And being shameless.
Letting go of my ego.
Right.
Not being embarrassed to look like an idiot.
So are you trying to tell us that some Americans, when they come here, they are so egocentric that they don't want to learn the African tradition?
I think very few foreigners seem to care. I don't understand why. Because it seems really stupid to come to a place,
right,
not study it before you come, not study it while you're here, neither the language, the history, the geography, none of it. I've always been astonished. I meet these Mzungu and even the Chinese and the Indians.
Right.
Very few seem to care enough, or maybe they are not good at learning. I
Let's
don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, so let's say I came from Australia and I'm doing a job. Why should I care about your language? I've just come here as an expatriate. I'm doing my contract and I'm leaving.
Because life is about more than doing your job, right? Life is living. And making money is not the only goal in life. I mean, it's one of them. As my father used to tell me, there are many ways to keep score of your life. Money is only one of the columns. So
you're talking to my demographic. The people that watch me are between 18 years and 30. And for them, money is the only thing. So that is so selfish of you to say that on such a show.
Well, my family came from poverty. My grandfather was very little different from a Ugandan. He grew up as a Russian peasant. He would gather firewood in the forest and sell it on the road. He was a radical against the Russian government, and they punished the radicals by making them go to war against Japan.
Right.
And so he ran away and hid away in a suitcase on a ship and got to America, and then had a pushcart of selling fruits and vegetables. And my father slept underneath the pushcart in New York City, and he saved up his nickels instead of riding the bus, and he bought himself a chemistry set and taught himself chemistry, and that's eventually led to his whole life.
Right, so we're talking a picture of abject poverty in Russia?
In Russia, and even in New York City, they were very poor. My family was poor.
So you know, when someone is watching you, all they're looking for are greener pastures when they go to the US. But if you tell them that someone from the US can be poor in the US, it's like a myth.
Oh no, there's a lot of poor people.
So there's a lot of... This is very important. You're looking into that camera and you're telling people that there are a lot of poor people in the US.
There are. It's hard to believe, I know, because the image that is shown on the media is always that Americans are living this happy, rich life, and some are. Believe it or not, even the ones who are rich are not always very happy. Some of them are the most unhappy.
Right.
So that's the truth. But there's a large percentage of people who are not rich and who are very poor, whether they're black, white, Latino. There are slums everywhere, in every city.
So I before we dive into the discussion, I want you to assure Ugandans that what they're seeing in Kampala today, where we have a lot of street kids, people sleeping on the street, in the US, other than Africans who just went to the US, do we have actually whites sleeping on streets because they're broke?
Yeah, definitely. You see it in Los Angeles all the time.
And a white guy is sleeping on the street.
Definitely. First of all, there's poor whites living in what they call trailer parks, and the rich whites are very cruel to them.
Right.
They call them poor white trash, and they have very much hatred towards poor whites.
Right.
And Los Angeles is in California, so it's the warmest part of the U.S., and so it's not as miserable to be homeless, and so many of the poorest people end up living on the streets of Los Angeles, in tents, on the sidewalk, and even in San Francisco. In Silicon Valley, there's a lot of poor people living on the street. I'm telling you, incredibly poor.
Yet others are making millions of dollars. Now, before we go for a short break, I want us to dive into this discussion. COVID hit and everyone was hit, but in African countries like Uganda, people are devastated. There's nothing to talk about. But I have watched you talk about the immense untapped potential that Ugandans have to make better themselves than they actually are. What makes you say that?
Well, I think I see a lot of very intelligent people here, and they have, and the heart of a Ugandan to me seems like they're pioneers. Right. They are very similar to how Americans used to be in the 1800s when they settled all across the continent, and the Canadians too. So they're farmers, they're traders, they're explorers, they're, I think that's who Ugandans are at heart, right? Even from the beginning, the story of Chintu, right? So, I mean...
the story of Chintu. I had even forgotten that. That is in like early primary. We studied the story of Nambi and Kintu in like P1, P2.
So I studied all of that before I came.
Before you came?
Before I came.
We're digressing, but how did that help you, the pre-study before you come into a location?
Well, I mean, it's not like I do this all the time, but I figured if I'm going to live somewhere, I should understand people's deep culture.
Right.
Because I know many people put on masks, and they put on different masks when they talk to different people. And if you want to know who someone really is, you want to know who's underneath the mask. Right. You have to know the deep culture. And so that's why I ended up learning the Lugero and things like that. I didn't know those before I came, but I learned when I came.
When you're on the ground.
Right. But I had read a lot of history about the Great Lakes region because I wanted to understand how it developed, and because I think it's a foolish person who goes somewhere and is not curious.
Are you a firm believer of the history you're being educated about?
Well, history is told by the winners. So one always has to take it with some grain of salt, unless it's a history that's filled with admissions of mistakes. Right. When I see those types of histories, I trust them more. When they recognize that they made mistakes, they failed and then they recovered. Those types of histories I respect more. Right. But the broad history was, just interesting. Just learning about how all these tribes developed and twins and separating the twins into different tribes. And it seems like that happened over and over again for probably 1,000 years, right? Maybe longer. And
do you think it's because of this history is why some of the Ugandans are not really making it like they ought to?
Well, I don't know if anybody is supposed to make it like they ought to. I mean, and what does making it mean?
On that point right there, let me go for a short break. When I come back, we talk about what making it actually is. Remember, you are still on the continent's leading intellectual platform, actually the highest platform for solution finding. You guessed right. You are on the desk and we are on the road, Spring Road in Bugolobi. Now do not go away. The desk takes a break and the desk returns actually in a bit. And welcome back. Now, if you're just joining us, I'm afraid you've missed the first insightful segment of this very lovely episode of The Desk, where we're actually talking so much more to a person who calls other white people Bazungu, yet he's also Muzungu, Joel the Traveler. He joins me on set tonight as we discuss and also learn so many things about our own culture. quite intimidating for the Africans right there. But you can follow this very lovely discussion on our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Do it for the desk and do it for Shadrack Kisame. Now, if you've not followed me on Facebook and Instagram, you have a minute. Reach out for your phone right now and type in Facebook, Shadrack Kisame. And if you are watching on YouTube, remember to subscribe and also hit that notification bell in case we put up something. You will be definitely the first person to know. But remember, we are at Nyenya Furnitures. They're actually taking a front row seat in getting you all the exquisite furniture that you need, be it pillows, carpets, name it. The list is actually endless. But we are with Joel, who is actually telling us in simple terms what is making it.
Well, I don't know if there is a simple way to describe making it. Because, I mean, okay, first of all, I'm Jewish. So I'm not your typical
No, slow down. You're Russian, you're Jewish. Who are you? You're Ugandan.
A Canamere Ugandan. I'm also Canadian.
Canadian.
So my family is Jewish on both sides.
Okay.
We are of the Levite and Kohanim lineage. So you guys know what that means.
Are you a believer of the Bible?
Well, the Old Testament, the Torah. I studied to be a rabbi when I was young.
Oh, rabbi.
Well, I never finished. But, and I ended up studying many other religions too.
Right.
But so yeah, I'm part of the line of my family's last name. My mother's side is David. So we are of King David's lineage.
Wow, I'm seated someone, King David of the Bible.
I'm not King David. I'm a distant.
All right, let's just to help a youth who is watching you right now. They're probably devastated with COVID and everything.
We all are.
We all are. But to a certain extent,
I lost a job. I lost my family. I mean, it's been a tough time for me. I know I have it better than many people here, but my savings got used up trying to make it, and I took on all kinds of projects that didn't pay very well or paid very long. So I can't say I've suffered in the same way as other people.
As others, yeah.
But we all suffer in our own unique way.
Yeah, but here they are watching you, and they're trying to find out. You say they have so much untapped potential. Let's start right there.
First of all, they have an education to whatever degree that they have, right? So if you have curiosity, that's already a resource. So curiosity is what should drive people their whole life, because it's a life of learning. And if you think learning is only in school, you're going to really limit your possibilities. I mean, I taught myself so many of the things I know outside of school. I learned to be a software engineer when I was 8 years old. I taught myself. There was no courses, and there was no books on it at the time. I had to learn. So many of the things I learned was because I was curious,
right,
and willing to put in whatever work it took to learn. Like I made one of the first video games, Battleship, when I was 13.
You made a video game?
Yeah, when I was 13 years old, and I gave it away.
You know, a couple of episodes ago or weeks ago, I hosted a young man here who was telling us that Ugandans are not far off from making the technology of actually building a video game. And here you are talking about video games. Is that true? Or he was being overambitious?
Well, he may be able to. I don't know who he is and what his skills are. He may very well be able to. If you define your agenda, your objective within your capabilities or not too far beyond them, then you can achieve them.
All right, go on.
So like, for example, at the time when I made my first video game, I did not own a computer. So I hear a lot of Ugandans say, oh, you had all these advantages in America. It's like, well, my father would not let me buy a computer, and he would not buy one for me.
Right.
And so I was trapped.
Why wouldn't he let you, though?
Because he said, look, it's just going to be a waste of money. It's going to sit there and collect dust. You won't use it. And so I decided I would prove him wrong. And so I used to bicycle across the city. I found an electrical shop that had computers, and I said, please, can I try to teach myself how to program on this personal computer? I had learned on mainframes. I taught myself when I was 8 years old. And I go, can I teach myself on the personal computer? And I think if I sit here, maybe parents will see a young man using a computer and it'll help you make sales. And I get to learn. And I could prove to my father I can do something. And then maybe I can buy a computer. So I used to bicycle after school every day over to the Radio Shack.
Right.
And that's how I taught myself to program. That's how I made Battleship.
So that element, is that what Ugandans are lacking? the inability to push hard to start somewhere?
Well, I don't want to blame them for a lack of ability. I actually want to take some of the responsibility for this problem. Because I think those of us in Silicon Valley, we tried to make everything look like it was easy. It was part of our culture to act like we weren't working hard. And so even when I was a student at Stanford, people would try to trick each other before exams, pretending that they were going to go take a vacation, go to the beach, go skiing. And actually they were hiding in the library studying.
I did that too. So
Silicon Valley has played a joke on the world. We pretend like we don't work hard. But people are working 16-hour days. They don't even see their family. And they live under their desk. Like my companies we started them in my apartment. And we slept under our desks. As we grew the business, we just had more and more people sleeping in my apartment. And most of these companies were started in garages or apartments, right? And the people who started them were not from rich families, right? Well, maybe Bill Gates, but Steve Jobs was not from a rich family, and many others were not from rich families. So hard work is kind of the thing that we've lied about. We didn't want to admit how hard we had to work, and especially my generation, Generation X.
So let me try to understand you, Joel. You're trying to tell a youth who is watching you right now that it doesn't matter how far from the ladder of poverty below you come from. All you need to do is start.
You have to start. You're going to make mistakes. We all do. The media likes to pretend like every big success that you read about was just this straight line of brilliant decisions. It's a total lie. First of all, for every one success you hear about, there's probably 999 failures, right, that never get reported. And some of them were doing better work, better technology, but just for some reason, maybe they didn't have the right connection, or the marketing strategy was wrong, or the business model was wrong, for some reason. Or may have been they had the best product and the best everything, and they still failed. For whatever reason. Maybe they faced a family problem and it distracted them, and they couldn't keep ahead. But the untold story is how many failures are happening for every success you hear about in the news. And so don't beat yourself up for failing. That's for American culture, that's one of the good things about it. I have many criticisms of American culture. But one of the positives is there's a second act, a third act, a fourth act. Here there tends to be somewhat of a culture, oh, you failed, you're finished.
Here when you fail, you're finished.
And that's part of the culture we have to change.
So I'm understanding you well right now. It's a cultural mindset that we have to change.
I think we need a cultural revolution. I think more than we need any political change, we need cultural change, and it starts with us. We have to change who we are and what we expect from life. And so I think that's the most important thing, is culture. Now, I don't expect people to change their culture overnight. It's impossible, right? Culture moves slower than politics, and politics moves much slower than technology, right? So and then so all these different speeds of change. So what can we do with the culture we have? So obviously Ugandans work very hard. I mean, we see this every day
on the street every day.
Every day, people just doing incredible acrobatic feats on their bodas, carrying so much stuff.
Things on their back.
Oh my God! The hard work, the people sweeping the streets, and
it's heroic.
It's heroic. There's a heroism and there's a nobility to hard work. So culture revolution number one is to respect hard work, and not see these people as failures or losers, but to praise them and thank them for their work. I think one of the great things I like about Uganda is that Ugandans thank each other for everything.
They do? They thank each other?
Constantly. I'm always hearing webale, 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 afoyo, afoyo, yalamanoy, so it's just, I call this thank you land.
Yes.
I mean, I compare it to America, where people are ungrateful. So many people have everything, but they never are grateful, and they're never happy. And yet,
or is it because that Ugandans have stayed in poverty so long that any crumb of success is a big thing for them?
That may be too. And it could be that easy wealth has made Americans ungrateful. And my parents' generation had to work hard, and I grew up somewhat spoiled. Although I still had to work hard. Okay, yes, there was an electronics store in my town.
Yeah.
If I would bicycle to it, I could use it, but I still had to bicycle over and sit there for hours at a time and teach myself something. And there was no internet then to use. There were no books, so I had to learn. So Ugandans can work hard. We know that.
Yeah.
And many do. So I think it's maybe it's being pointed in. I mean, there's no one right answer for any of this, right? Some people are farmers at heart. Some people are traders at heart. Some people want to do data mining. Other people want to do entertainment. And they have their different talents and their interests. And it's a perpetual, unending challenge in life.
All right, now talking about the challenges in life, and at that point right there, I want to go for a short break, but we come back, we address the challenges that are limiting. This is the last segment, but we talk about the challenges. We bring in government, what government can do to make every space a better space after the break. Now, you are still a lovely audience, and guess what? We are with Joel, the traveler. The traveler means he's been everywhere in Africa, if I get that right.
Well, actually, the time traveler.
The time traveler. Now,
so I like to think of myself as looking at the future, looking at the past in different parts of the world. Because I study a lot of history, of technology, of culture, and I like to figure out how we can mix and match.
All right, how we mix and match after the break. Do not go away. All right, now many thanks to Nyenya Furniture, where we're actually shooting tonight. They are on Spring Road at Krish Mall here in Bugolobi. Now they are actually your best dealers in furniture, carpets, pillows, name it. They have you sorted. Now if you are looking for those, you better actually pass by and see what they have to offer you. Now remember, you are still on the continent's leading intellectual platform. Anything intellect, you guessed right, you are on the desk. Now this is the last segment. If you have someone and they're not on TV, call them and tell them that the desk is live on Shadrack Kisame's YouTube. Now on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscription bell and also the notification. In case we put up something, you'll be the first to know. Now we are with Joel, the time traveler who loves to study. He's here assuring us that Ugandans have more potential than they actually know about. But some of the challenges, I like to think government is for a country is a universal solution in a way. What do you think government could do to make spaces better in this cultural revolution we're talking about?
Well, one thing they've done, which is great, is they've kind of stayed out of regulating telecom. And they have not...
Have they? Really?
Well, they've allowed many competitors to enter the field over time.
Yeah.
And when I first came in 2007, the only place you could get internet were at the fancy hotels. Right? And I know because I worked with some of the owners. And it was very slow compared to what we had in Canada or US.
Right.
And I found out from the hotel owners they were paying a huge amount of money per month, $1,000, $3,000 per month for the internet that they had. And it was very, very slow. And now today, so when I first calculated the unfairness of it all,
right,
was in 2007, the amount of bandwidth you got per dollar or per hour of labor of the typical Ugandan living in a city. Right? And I did the comparison of how many hours of work a Canadian or American would have to work for that same amount of bandwidth. It was at 20,000 to 1. So a Ugandan would have had to work 20,000 hours to be able to get the same amount of bandwidth that 1 hour of Canadian or American labor would get.
And isn't that somewhat slowing or reducing our efficiency?
Well, that was the case in 2007. So now today, right? So we know the lowest cost internet. What is is it Lyco Mobile is the latest one?
Yeah.
Lyco Mobile, and they're like 15,000 for 15 GB.
Yes.
So I redid the calculation. So when I first came, I said it was 20,000
to 1.
And even before Lyco Mobile, with MTN and Airtel's data rates, it had now reduced to 20 to 1.
20 to 1.
So from 2007 to 2020, the
reduced
the
with like
digital
18,000?
a thousandfold reduction in digital divide.
Right.
And now with Lyco, I don't know how good their service is, how broad their coverage, or any of that. Assuming we'll get there soon broadly, then the gap became 4-to-1. So when you think about that, then in these 14 years that I've been in Uganda, the gap narrowed from 20,000 to 1 to 4 to 1.
Yeah.
So it's so profound. I don't think Ugandans realize how important or significant it is that now they can access all this information on YouTube. They can teach themselves anything.
You accredit that to government.
Staying out of the way. Yes. The government stayed out of the way, and they allowed more players to enter into the market.
So let's talk about the youth who feel like government is the problem. What do you have to say?
Well, I tend to believe that the government should unleash the private sector more. So I think that would have been a better solution for the COVID situation.
Right.
I think I talked about it in one of my videos that I worked with a Ugandan engineer who made a ventilator, because I was worried that we didn't have enough ventilators here. So I said, well, let's go back in time. Let's pick a design from 1950s and let's use junk from any go down anywhere you could. And could you build a ventilator out of junk? And so that was my attitude, because I knew if I took an American Silicon Valley attitude, that we have to have $50,000 machinery to keep people alive, we will die, because this country doesn't have the money. So it's like, let's be real. What do we have? We have smart kids, and we have a lot of junk. We got junk cars and bikes and motorcycles everywhere. Can't we build our own ventilators?
So Joel, sorry to cut you short, but let me get this. Government is not leveraging on the sharp Ugandans that they have.
Well, for example, instead of a lockdown, we should have had, I don't know what to call it, but somehow a lifting up, allowing up. Like
instead of a lockdown.
Yeah, allowing people to try to help solve the problems. Like during the Spanish flu in 1918, there was no shortage of hospital space anywhere on the planet. Right? And 50 million people died.
Yes.
Hundreds of millions got infected. Why was there no shortage of hospital space? Because they built tents on football pitches, and they put mattresses in the tents. There was no shortage of ICU space. Every neighborhood had tents, and we could have done that here. Now, the UPDF did a little bit of that. I saw that at Bombo Road. They started building ICUs
tents,
that were in tents.
Right.
So we shouldn't have fallen into the panic that America did, where they thought, oh, we're going to have overloaded emergency rooms. Now, I come from a medical family. My father was the founder of my city hospital. So he went from extreme poverty, taught himself chemistry, went to medical school in the middle of nowhere in the U.S., because it was the only place that would allow Jews. And then he became a doctor, and then he founded my city hospital. So I grew up in a medical family. My great uncle is the founder of Israel's first hospital. It's named after us, Bellinson Hospital.
Wow.
So, but yet, I don't believe in this focus on buildings for either education or healthcare.
You don't believe in the infrastructure in terms of buildings?
No, I don't think it's important.
What should it be? It should be more of the professionalism?
People can learn anywhere. People can heal anywhere. You don't have to be in a special building for either of those.
Right? All right, John, our time is really, really well spent. But let's say you are in a position where your voice is heard. Right now, policymakers are watching you. What would you say? What would you tell first, government, and second, the youths that are watching you?
I would say to the government and to all the people who have been very worried about the virus, understandably, the whole world has been worried. The opposite of fear is not control. The opposite of fear is love and trust. So we need to trust the people that they have the skills and the intentions, and enable them to do things to solve their problems.
Right.
The government isn't going to be able to solve everything. The tax base isn't large enough. We can't try to imitate the U.S. and Canada. We just don't have the ability. I mean, I came here wanting to do that. I've had to learn the hard way. We can't. And so it's like, but the resource we have is we have curious, energetic young people who in their heart, the whole culture is all about creating value. value addition, and we're seeing it. Right? Everybody is starting up these coffee roasting companies and all kinds of value addition for agriculture.
Right.
So people want to add value. Greenhouses are springing up everywhere. People are developing seedlings so they can have better farms. So I think what I would tell policymakers is trust the people more, enable them by to form their own type of schooling. Maybe I've seen the traffic jams from schools, right? I've lived here 14 years, and it's just gotten worse and worse every year. And the parents and the families are stressed out trying to get kids to school and everything else.
Does that mean that a lot of Ugandan children have access to education?
Well, they do, but they don't use it necessarily for it. I mean, anybody who has a smartphone, which is what, a quarter of the people in the country have smartphones, and of course they could share them, and you could even project a smartphone onto a wall, right? So you could make any room into a classroom, and if you would pick the right videos that exist already on YouTube, you could teach any subject to anyone, right? And because we know we have sad problems where even some of our teachers are illiterate, right? And it's a tragedy.
Even our teachers are illiterate. So let's just, before we wind up, let's just speak a little bit about the education system of Uganda. Are you quite familiar with it?
I can't claim that I know everything about it, and I don't want to criticize, because I'm sure there are some good schools and there are some poor schools.
I'll speak for myself. I went to paramedical school. Never worked in my life. I'm working on TV. I'm in the media. And I feel like
school didn't prepare you for the real world.
Exactly.
You're not the only one. And it's not just Uganda, it's worldwide. Because remember I said technology changes faster than politics, and politics changes faster than culture, and culture changes much faster than biology. So we have all these different speeds of change. How can schools keep up with that?
Right.
And so even how can parents? The world that we're now in is different than the world that the parents grew up in. So it's hard for them to know what wisdom to give their children.
All right, Joel, look in that camera as we wind up and speak to disillusioned youths down there in Chibuli, Kabalagala, Chikuba Mutwe, Naguru. Where are you coming from?
So Musibia Mutia Banyabo Nebasebo or Kopango or anyways, I could go through 20 languages. But anyways, don't lose heart. It's you have a long life ahead of you. You're going to learn from this. The suffering you've gone through will make you stronger. You are discovering your limits, and both of those are important. Discovering your strengths, discovering your limits. Be grateful for the suffering you've been through. You can't change it. It already has happened. The one thing you have that no one can ever take away from you, no matter what, is your attitude. What attitude you choose to take to the circumstances you're in. And so that's the one freedom that no one ever will be able to take from you. And try to see everything that happens as a blessing, no matter how painful.
Right. Inspirational words right there. Thank you very much for coming to the show. It's a wrap. Hope I can get to see you some other time here. Have you gotten a Ugandan wife yet?
I don't want to talk. Currently, I'm single.
He's single. All right. So for all the Ugandan women watching right there, the man is single. Now, you've been a lovely audience. It's quite an inspirational episode that we had today. Now, remember, it is an exclusive. We are on the road, Spring Road in Bugolobi, at Nyanya Furniture, Krish Mall here. You can check them up. Look them up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as Nyanya Furniture. They have everything interior. All you need to do is just walk in, and you'll actually definitely be able to get whatever you want. But from me and the entire U24 management, would like to say good night, good luck, adios for God and my country, and may the good Lord bless this beautiful Uganda. Now, until next week, same place, same time, and of course, same host. Good night.
Wangala okula kulane.
Wangala
okula kulane.
Good night.